Welcome back to Studio One, where my guest today with me is Honourable Member of Parliament, Mr. Bob Rae. Bob, just before we cut to the break, we started talking about NDP, the party that you helped build. This is the third factor in the election which we are going to see, especially the people in the GTA and the 905 and the 416 regions. Very, very strong component. They own at this time 30 seats in the federal parliament. Conservatives at this time own 143 seats. Liberals 77. What is the agenda? How are you going to fight the party that you once represented and took to the federal and to the provincial election?
I don't think it's a matter of fighting them or fighting. I think it's a matter of talking to voters directly. And I think voters have an increasingly clear understanding that this is not an election about criticizing Mr. Harper. This is not an election about saying I want to poke my finger in his eye, I want to be able to criticize him. This is an election about replacing Mr. Harper. And my decision in '96 when I left politics for a time and then left the NDP and then came back as a Liberal was a slow evolution, and it was based really on my reflection on my experience in government. For me, the big experience in my political life was becoming the Premier of Ontario and understanding that as Premier you have to make difficult decisions and you can't please everybody and you have to govern from the center of the political spectrum if you want to be able to talk to all the people. And when I left office and the government was defeated and I decided that I would leave politics at that time, the NDP went back to well, let's go back to being in opposition. Let's go back to criticizing. Let's go back to pretending we can be all things to all people. Let's pretend there are no difficult decisions. Let's just carry on in that way. And I just said, look, this is wrong. We can't. This isn't the politics that I understand.
It doesn't happen in the real world.
It doesn't happen. No. And so I think our pitch, our argument, our persuasive argument with the people is to say to people, you really have a choice between whether you want a Liberal government or a Conservative government, and ultimately that's the choice. I respect the emotions and the passion behind people who say, we want more and we want to keep fighting. I understand that, but this is the real world of politics where we have to make real choices. And the fact is that there are many ridings in the GTA, for example, where if you vote for the NDP, all you're doing is taking votes away from the chance to make sure that Mr. Harper does not become the Prime Minister again, and that in fact we have a new government.
Right, but the law of necessity that you just mentioned and then you talked about when you were reflecting back to your 1990-1995 government, that era cannot be compared with any other era. Reason being, there was one of the worst crisis that world was going through in Canada.
We just had it here.
Exactly.
We had it here again.
We had the same similar situation in the last 2 years with the Harper era.
Suddenly, you know what people say. You say, Bob Rae, well, he had a huge deficit, and look at Mr. Harper.
Correct.
Look at what's happening in the provinces, not just Ontario, but across the world.
So Bob Rae,
suddenly people are understanding that what we went through then, they're also going
Harper
through today.
government is going through now.
Mr. Harper can't give me any lectures about what kind of a deficit you run in a recession. Mr. Flaherty was praising, saying, of course we have to run deficits during a recession.
I think Mr. Harper is actually learning from your experiences.
Well, he's never said so.
He's never said so, but it is apparent because you have been known to make decisions. Although you lost a lot of majority vote because of your decisions, but you did. You took those decisions. I can go back to Rae days, I can talk about so many other things. You took those decisions in the common benefit of the people.
But better a Rae day than a Harper lifetime. Right?
We have 5 more weeks to see that. But you're right about making certain decisions even though it cost you a majority vote. And you did those. You were famous for that. You did those. You're back again. We hope to see you again in the Parliament, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. What I would like to move on to right now, until the May 2nd, which is the election date, we'll have to wait and see who comes and who does what. You have been the foreign affairs critic in the federal parliament. Now, under your foreign affairs critic position, things have happened which people have been very critical of. UAE scam scenario, whatever happened in the UAE. We lost our Security Council. We are in Afghanistan, which again, liberals started, and then later on conservatives came in, they took over and all that. So I would want you to talk to us about all of these components of your foreign policy, or of Canada's foreign policy. Let's start with the UAE. Let's talk about what happened in the UAE. Our 17th partner in trade, $2 billion exports. Everybody from the provinces, all the premiers visiting, and the economic ministers visiting UAE, trying to establish ties and relationship, and suddenly something happens because of our protectionist policy to save Air Canada from a fair and open competition. We lose faithful allies like the UAE that ultimately cost us the Security Council seat as well. What's your call?
Well, first of all, let me just explain to your viewers, between 1996 and 2006, I was back in private life as a lawyer, but I also spent time building up an organization called the Forum of Federations, which is a non-governmental organization which looks at governance around the world, and particularly looks at federal structures. So I spent made several visits to Pakistan, for example, talking to the government there about their governance issues internal, what was going on in Balochistan, how do we create a better federation in Pakistan. As you know, there's a new constitution in Pakistan now that a number of people have been giving advice to the government and to the Pakistani parliament about the changes that are needed, greater devolution, more powers for the region in Pakistan. And in the course of that, I've traveled widely, particularly in the Middle East.
Sri Lanka,
which
they were so fond of you, they didn't want to let you go.
That's the government. It's the government. The government at that time. But I had played it. It was an interesting challenge for me, interesting role that I played. But specifically, so when I came back into the parliament, as you know, my father was a diplomat, and I grew up in that world. Coming back, I think the government this government has a very narrow view of foreign policy. They really have been more like a party in opposition in government. They've been reluctant to kind of embrace all of Canada's traditions and role as a country. Very suspicious of the UN, very suspicious of international institutions, very ideological in the positions that they've taken, and I don't think have served Canada well, frankly. And I think that was ultimately reflected in the loss of the seat on the Security Council. I think that was a really bad reflection on the Harper government in terms of what ground we lost as a result of not so much decisions that they took, but simply their incompetence. And the UAE case is a very good case in point. In fact, it's a classic example. Because the UAE situation is not only about, first of all, the UAE is a moderate country in a part of the world where moderation is not widely known and is to be prized wherever it is found.
Yep.
The UAE has become a kind of international hub of activity, commercial activity, between the West, the Middle East, the broader Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, including Pakistan, and Africa. It's a unique hub of commercial activity, openness, people learning from each other, people engage with each other. Very diverse place. And they've built up this amazing airline, and they're not just one, but two, Etihad and Emirates. Now, those airlines, using Abu Dhabi and Dubai as their hubs, are taking people around from all the regions that I've just mentioned, and they are expanding widely. The quality of their service is high, and they're creating a new basis of competition for the older airlines, European Airlines, Air Canada, among others. And this is the world. This is not going to change.
Fair trade world.
Well, people say, well, it's state-owned and therefore it's subsidized and blah, blah. You sort of say, well, Yes, of course it's state-owned, but you've also got to recognize that these airlines are offering a competitive service, and that these hubs are real hubs. They're not just made-up places. They're real hubs. So really what we're facing is a competition that we have to be able to respond to.
Right.
That we can't just ignore. We can't just say, well, we're going to put up walls and we're going to say to this passenger, you have to go to Frankfurt and then you go there. So Canadian businessmen, I've talked to Canadian business people here in Mississauga and in the region, 2 or 3 very well-known companies, and they say, my competition flies from New York directly to Dubai. I have to go through Frankfurt. This hub, and because the service is only operating.
And now he needs the
3
visa.
days a week. Well, now he needs the visa.
200 Canadian companies.
And we've lost the base.
Yeah, we did.
We lost the base with that Camp Mirage. We lost the base, and the Conservatives don't seem to have understood that, you know, if you're going to stay in Afghanistan with 700 soldiers doing training, you're still going to need a base from which to operate. And Camp Mirage is a very useful facility, not just for us, but for all of NATO. Yeah, and it was free.
It was free, and your wounded were being treated in the base hospitals free of cost as well. I mean,
from every perspective, this decision was extremely short-sighted. Not because we want to say to Air Canada, well, goodbye. Not at all. But to say, look, there must be a way of saying to Emirates and Etihad, we need some time to adjust. You're not going to get all the flights you want. You're not going to get every flight you want. Right. You're not going to get all the whole package. And I visited the UAE. I mean, one of the things that I've done as the foreign affairs critic is to say, I'm not going to sit around and wait for the government of Canada, Mr. Harper, to say, you can go there. I go say it's a free country. I'm going to go and travel. So I go to the UAE. I meet with people myself. I discuss with them. I say, look, tell me what you're, and I argue with them saying, well, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that much. No,
and that's why you were labeled as being on the side of the UAE and the pro-UAE and all that.
That's what Mr. Harper will always do. You have to understand, whatever you do, he will, as we say, like in cricket, he will throw the ball, he will throw the ball right at your head. That's what he will do.
So you better be wearing a good helmet.
So you better be prepared, and you'd better have your bat up and ready to protect yourself.
So basically 2 subjects here. We are talking about one, protectionism policies of the government, which is Air Canada's protection, and the other is the relationship and renewal and rejuvenation of relationship with the UAE.
Somewhere there's a compromise. Somewhere a mature government says, we understand, we have an economic interest in our own national airline. Maybe even the national airline has a discussion with the Emirates and Etihad. You talk about how you can do something constructive. You try to work out something. You try to think going forward. Because going forward, there is no avoiding the fact that the world is getting smaller and competition is getting stiffer. That in fact, that they're going to be, this is the way of the world. It's not something we can suddenly, and so for the government, I was so surprised in a way. You have a government that's based in West, whose origins, its intellectual, ideological origins are in Western Canada. And that government is saying, we are simply going to protect whatever is there. So it's not a lot of logic there.
Continue watching Studio One, where my guest today with me is Bob Rae. We'll be right back after the short break.